once you realize what it was that you learned, that false identity, that false meaning that has been guiding you, how you show up in your marriage and in your relationships, you can replace it with the deeper truth of who you were born to be before you learned that. Then when you see those red flags, you can consciously say, wow, that's a red flag. Either I better monitor this or test this to see how serious this is, or that's a showstopper and I'm out of here. I'm not going there again. Yeah. So there's some work involved, because until you become aware that you have a negative pattern in some ways, it's really hard to change it. So, like if you're just living your life, it's kind of like a fish lives in water. The fish doesn't know anything about water. It's just how it's always grown up. It's always been in water. I've always shown up this way. And I don't know if I'm really loved for who I am or not, because I'm not good enough. So life is really a struggle. So there's kind of three pieces that form that false identity associated with that false belief that you created, or I created when I was little. Because codependent relationships have a downward spiral. You do things inside the relationship to get that positive feedback, that admiration, that valuation. And if you do something, eventually it's kind of taken for granted. You then were open to ignoring certain red flags in relationships. You said, oh, I've seen that before. That's like my mom. I can deal with that. That's okay. The reality is it's the beginning of a codependent relationship. There are certain things that are influencing how you decide to take action or not take action in certain circumstances, which are based on the identity that you've created and you've been living with in your life. And if it's still the one that you created as a child, it's normally trauma-based.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Just Separated podcast. I'm Karen Oman, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I help people navigate the emotional, legal, and practical challenges of divorce, including high conflict and narcissist relationships. Each week, I am joined by expert guests to share guidance, tools, and strategies so you can move forward with clarity, confidence, and resilience. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many layers of divorce. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Karen Oman, host of Just Separated podcast. Today we're going to be talking about healing through divorce and finally breaking old patterns. And our expert guest today is Greg Wheeler. Greg is a transformational love, relationship, divorce, and life coach, an author who is passionate about empowering and working with individuals and couples to have a conscious, uncoupling divorce and or create the love, relationships, life, and impact in the world they most deeply desire. As a certified conscious uncoupling coach, certified calling in the one coach, conscious recoupling coach, love coach, and a single dad coach for individuals and couples, Greg displays empathy, experience, and sensitivity as he expertly guides and supports his clients to transform their challenges and break down in divorce, relationships, love and parenting, and career, and move into powerful breakthroughs that allow them to create happier, healthier, more loving, and rewarding lives for themselves, their children, and others. Welcome, Greg, to the Just Separated podcast.
Hi, Karen. Thank you for that really nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
So, Greg, you talk a lot about conscious uncoupling. What does that really mean to those who don't know? And how can it change someone's experience when they're going through a divorce?
Well, that's a big question. It's a big ask. So Catherine Woodward Thomas created the phrase conscious uncoupling, and she wrote a book called Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After. It's the even after that's important, after the breakup, after the divorce. And she wrote the book based on some of her own life experience. She's a certified psychiatrist in therapy, and she's also done a lot of personal growth work. She's written several books, bestsellers. And so conscious uncoupling was made famous by Gwyneth Paltrow when she and her husband mentioned it, and it kind of caught on. It's actually a process that helps you learn and understand your part in co-creating the difficulties in your relationship and in your marriage based on your life experience, what happened to you growing up, that you brought that identity, that way of looking at life, some people call it baggage, into the relationship. And so did your partner. And it's actually an aside for a moment. Imago theory, who was created by Harville Hendricks, that term, and in the book Getting the Love You Want, is about, he clearly states that you are attracted to the person who is best qualified to push your buttons, to help you learn and grow what your baggage was that you're bringing into the relationship. So conscious uncoupling is a process that helps you see your patterns, that how you're showing up in the relationship, and your part in co-creating what's going on in that relationship. And then once you get yourself clear, then you can see how your partner is showing up and what they're bringing in. So this then leads to a self-discovery. Oh, I see that I'm showing up as insecure. I'm showing up as needy. I'm showing up in a codependent manner. And that's my pattern. Well, where is that coming from? Well, the first time that I started showing up this way was when I was little and at home. And one of them is that I don't matter. That's one of the false identities, the false patterns that people create growing up. And so that can come from experiences with your family where they were more important than you are. Your parents always wanted you to do what they wanted you to do. You didn't get heard or seen or validated. So you learned that your feelings, needs, and desires aren't important. This is kind of a long-winded answer, but here's the punchline. Once you realize what it was that you learned, that false identity, that false meaning that has been guiding you, how you show up in your marriage and in your relationships, you can replace it with the deeper truth of who you were born to be before you learned that. Because it's a learned identity based on your environment. But it's not at all who you were born to be. You were born a gift. You were God, the universe, whatever you believe in, made it possible for you to be here. You belong here. You're more than good enough. You matter. You're lovable. You're wanted. You're safe. These are truths of who you were born to be. But we lose them when we create that false identity to keep ourselves safe in our family and in our social situations and in our relationships. Do you feel like I answered the question? It's kind of a long-winded answer, but...
That's good. I'm just going to edit for 1 minute. My computer isn't plugged in. So I wasn't, so I got this, I was like, editor, just break from 5:30, 1 minute. Let me just plug it in. I'm like, oh my goodness, don't interrupt Greg, but my computer, oh, it's just one of the, I feel like it's Monday, but it's not. Anyways.
Yeah.
No, it was good.
Middle of the week.
I know. I don't know what my excuse is. No, it was good. Do you want, you're good with that, or do you want to?
No, I'm fine. Just ask the next question, which is, okay, so how does that show up in the relationship?
That's what I was just about to. I was just going to ask. I was just, okay. All right. So at 6:25. So Greg, how does that show up in marriage? Is because I know, I'm going to admit to everybody, I'm a people pleaser. I'm the fawner, right? I know I didn't realize that till actually after I left the marriage, and I kind of rediscovered myself. So tell everybody how it shows up, because we all want to know.
I think the easiest way to share that is to tell about my journey. So personally, I grew up in a very middle-class family on Long Island. My dad was a great provider. He was president of elevator, escalator, air conditioning company in Long Island City. You know, back in the day, they all had their martini lunches, and then they would come home and have another drink or two. And so my father, turned out, was a fully functional alcoholic. After 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, I would try, he's finally sitting down, he's finally where I could get access to him, and I'd start talking to him or whatever, and I would get a hard time from him. I'd get a little bit of verbal abuse. And so this went on for a number of years, and I was the oldest. So I was always being pushed to do better, to do more. And so what I learned is that I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough just the way that I am. So I have to work harder than anybody else to be good enough. So I got good grades in school. I took extra courses in school. I got a scholarship to go to college. I got my master's. I worked my butt off in college to get good grades. And then I worked for difficult bosses. And then it showed up in my marriage as overgiving. I had to be the one who was giving so that I could be good enough and feel that I deserved their love, their attention. And so that complicates a relationship. And some people would say, oh, it'd be great to be with an overgiver, they take care of us. But it feels controlling because I'm always suggesting a better way. Here, let me do that for you. And sometimes it can be hard for me to receive help because I want to be the one who's good enough. So I'm the one who wants to be giving. So I'm not receiving. And an important part in a healthy, happy, loving relationship is being open to receive and to ask for help, because then the other person feels valued, needed, and important and relevant. And so I had 4 kids with my wonderful wife at the time, but I was spending so much time at work trying to prove that I was good enough and being a single income earner that I wasn't home to help with 4 kids. And so she was burned out. I was burned out. And it broke. And so I was divorced quite a few years ago. It wasn't until about 9 years ago when I found Catherine's work that I was able to look at the pattern of not being good enough, of being insecure, of having to be an overgiver, that I was able to identify that false meaning, that false identity I created when I was little, that I wasn't good enough. And once I got to there, then I was able to learn that that was just a story I made up, and I'm really more than good enough, and I don't have to prove myself to anyone. So then in my relationships, since I figured this out, I'm much more open to show up as an equal. I'm much more open to receive. I'm much more open to be interdependent instead of codependent, because when you're an overgiver, you're codependent upon positive feedback, positive praise, evaluation, being needed by others in order to feel good about yourself. Now I feel good about myself because I know I'm good enough, and so I can give and take, being valued or praised or loved without being codependent about it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I was thinking, we talked about this before we aired, is that, I talked about it as in patterns that showed up, but you want to talk more about your false beliefs, right? So can we just briefly talk about some of those false beliefs? Like what you are and what I am are kind of similar. I was give more, maybe they'll love me more, right? And it wasn't the high achieving one. It was more of the, I'll do everything. I'll fix this. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this until, as you've said, you burn out. But I just wanted to, there are other false beliefs, right? So that we can just briefly talk about.
Sure. So you and I have never talked about this personally for you. This is the first time you shared that information. So I would intuit or guess that the underlying false belief might be that I don't matter. So I overgive in order to be important to other people, and then I matter to them. And so then you get the positive feedback that overcomes the false belief that you're constantly trying to prove that you really do matter because you believe that you don't. And so that's how you show up in your relationship. You give in to other people. You make them more important than yourself. You make them matter more than you do. So that's just an example of another one. So far we've talked about I'm not good enough. We've talked about I don't matter. And by the way, I should mention that there's 3 aspects to each of these. There's the one about the internal belief, the I am or I am not. And then there's how others treat you. Others are or others are not. because there's a belief associated with them. Are they trustworthy? Are they lovable? Um, are they judgmental? Are they, what are they bringing into how are they showing up? And then there's life. So inside of I'm not good enough, for me, I wasn't good enough. That's the I am piece. And then the others are, no matter how hard I try, I never am good enough to get what I want from other people. Others judge me and criticize me. Others want more from me. So that's how that pattern shows up in relationship to others. And so then that encourages me to give and give and give to prove that I'm good, enough. And then life is really hard because I'm constantly working to prove that I'm good enough. And I'm constantly trying to do more. And so it's really hard and scary. And I don't know if I'm really loved for who I am or not because I'm not good enough. So life is really a struggle. So there's kind of three pieces that form that false identity associated with that false belief that you created, or I created when I was little. So yeah, so some other ones. I'm not wanted. I'm not lovable. I'm not safe. And these each have different patterns. There's 22 in Catherine's lexicon, and she has a new book coming out, True You something, True You Awakening, and she in January of 26, and so she lists all of them in there. But just to give a few examples, the I'm not safe person might compromise being in a loving relationship to be with someone who's wealthy and takes care of everything, has all the rules and sets everything down. So it may seem like a safe place to start with, but over time it becomes very prescriptive and trapping, and you don't get to be yourself. You have to conform to what it is that the other person is saying or providing in order to feel safe. So, I'm not valuable. I'm not wanted. I'm bad. Inside of I'm bad is another one. Well, they all are. So in that one, you don't feel good enough to be in a relationship. You're bad, that you're going to sabotage it, that you're too much. And so then that pattern causes you to show up a certain way in relationships, which then causes them to be codependent and then causes them to eventually fail. Because codependent relationships have a downward spiral. You do things inside the relationship to get that positive feedback, that admiration, that valuation. And if you do something, eventually it's kind of taken for granted. So you don't get it. So then you have to try harder. And so when you don't get it anymore, you then become unhappy, you become lonely, you become scared, you become worried. And so then the relationship becomes unfulfilling and it breaks.
Greg, is that a common one?
Which one?
The one with the spiraling, the
Codependency, yes. So codependency can show up in any one of these, because what happens is that you're looking to get something from your partner that you're not giving yourself. I'm safe. Your partner has lots of money. He knows all the things to do, or she knows all the things to do. She takes care of me. She's a giver. So, but that's a codependent relationship. I'm not good enough. So I want somebody who I can help and take care of and support. And if I keep doing it and I feel shows up as controlling or overgiving or manipulative, then it's the downward spiral. I'm not getting the positive feedback that I need to feel good about myself and to feel happy in the relationship. So most all of I think it is all, but most all of these false identities show up in a way that you're trying to get your partner to take care of you or give you something that you're not giving yourself, so you feel good about yourself. And that's the beginning of the codependent relationship.
Is that also the beginning of when they would come see you, or they would be talking about divorcing? Like, explain how you work with people when you work with them. Like what's a great time to work with them? Like, is it they're about to separate, or you help them through the divorce process, or just explain to everybody about that.
Well, the global answer is it's a great time for me to help clients whenever they want help. So it shows up for different people at different times. Some people, it's when they're in the middle of a divorce and they're feeling scared and lonely and they don't know what to do. If they can connect with and identify that false identity and heal it, then they can love themselves enough to start standing up for themselves in the divorce negotiations, honoring their own feelings, needs, and desires to make sure that they're showing up in a proper way. It also then gives them the opportunity to have compassion for their partner because they can see their part in co-creating what went wrong in the relationship. And then they can also get some insight into what their partner did that caused the situation to go wrong in the marriage or in the relationship, which is why I use the same process to help couples who want to recouple, because it's when you learn the truth and you heal that part of you that has that false identity that you can then show up in a healthier, happier, more grounded way, which creates the opportunity for a new kind of relationship with your partner. It's not about fixing the old. It's about creating something new from this healthier version of yourself. So when's a good time? I would love to get a couple 6 months before they're thinking, before the word divorce comes up. What happens though, it's kind of like an addict. An addict doesn't ask for help until they've hit dark night of the soul or rock bottom. And so people go along thinking that it's kind of normal, that relationships aren't great. They go along thinking, oh, I'll get through this and it'll get better. And what happens is they don't do anything to really solve the problem. They may go for a therapy session or two or a couples therapy session or two. But I have found that this level of work is much different because it helps you really. It's not about just your habits. It's not just about your behaviors. It's not just about tips or tricks to write little notes or to have a 10-second kiss or to hug your partner every day. This is about, who am I being in the relationship? Am I being someone who's not good enough? Or am I being someone who knows that they're more than good enough and they show up as an equal? And they're open to receiving and giving love. They're open to listening instead of being heard. It's another thing in codependent relationships. People get to a place where they're arguing because they're not being heard, because each one feels more disadvantaged or more the victim than the other person. And so they want the other person to hear about their problem and fix it. And so they're both trying to one-up themselves and saying, oh, mine's worse than yours, or I'm more hurting than you are. But when you come in grounded and centered, then you can listen and you can acknowledge and you can discuss where the other person's coming from. And then instead of getting pushed out because it becomes argumentative, I call that leaning out, you can lean in and really listen to the other person and then help them out and make some behavior compromises or negotiate something that then resolves the situation.
I want to ask, how hard have you found in your practice that the people to take responsibility?
It rocks their world. Because when people finally see the fact that my being not good enough caused me to show up a certain way, it meant that I was reorganizing something that my wife did. It felt controlling. It felt manipulative. It felt like I didn't need her. It felt like she didn't feel seen and valued and heard because I was trying to overgive all the time. I could see how I was pushing her away. I could see how my way of showing up was having the exact opposite effect of what I wanted. That's when the responsibility light bulb went off. So then when I completed the conscious uncoupling process and I realized that I was more than good enough and I learned the skills to start living that way, develop the capacities and practice the skills to start living that way, then I took responsibility for how I was showing up. So it takes a certain amount of desire, intention, motivation to lean in to do this work, because it's not always easy work. Sometimes you see things that you don't want to see. You don't want to take responsibility for your part in what you co-created. So I warn my clients typically when I start with them, I say, we're going to do some emotional push-ups. This is going to be tough. I'm a coach. I'm going to ask you to give me one more try at looking at something differently. Give me one more, tell me how you felt about this. What was your part? What did you do to co-create this? And so this opens the door to becoming conscious. That's where the conscious uncoupling comes from.
Now, sorry, Greg. When you're saying that, I'm a grief counselor and a thanatologist, and I'm just thinking that there is a grief component with this. When you come to understand your false beliefs or your patterns, there has to be some deep pain in there, or some grief that this is how I showed up, or this is what I did, responsibility, or what I put up with, or whatever.
Right. Okay, so let me talk to the two pieces of grief in the conscious uncoupling world. One is going through the loss of a marriage, going through a marriage breakup is terrible loss in and of itself. Your dreams for the future, your dreams that you wanted to create a life with this other person a certain way, your hopes and aspirations, they go away. And it's not so simple, because in a death, someone's gone, but in a divorce with her children, you're still going to see this other person. So you have to get through that. And then you're absolutely right. There is this component that when you suddenly see, oh, wow, I was responsible for this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I hurt that person this way. I can't believe I did this to myself because I did that to her. Yes, so you really feel bad about that. In this work, what we do, though, is we look at it. I still did the best I knew how. I didn't know any different. I tried and tried, and I did the best that I could, but I didn't know a different way to do it. So yes, it had that negative effect. And now inside of this program, I can turn that negative thing into a positive because I can learn from it. When I learn from it, I can see that what I did or didn't do caused this, and I can make a promise and a commitment to myself, or if I'm still in a relationship, I can make that promise and commitment to someone else. Then I'm going to do it differently from now on. I'm really going to earnestly try to not show up the way I did before, but I'm going to show up this way. I'm going to show up listening more. I'm going to show up making sure that I have an opportunity to receive what it is that you're offering. So then that kind of turns it into a positive, because yes, it was painful, but there's something good that I can take away from it so that I can have a happier life, or we can have a happier relationship, or we can have a more connected and deeper loving relationship, because I'm learning from the negative thing that happened. And so, number one, forgive yourself, because you did the best you could. You didn't know any different. You were just ignorant. You tried. It was not intentional that you hurt the other person the way that you did. And then two, what can I learn from this so that I don't hurt that person again that way? And it can really help people work through that sadness.
So the patterns of these false beliefs have been going on quite a long time.
Yeah, like
so
forever.
Forever, right? So the process is, and you can tell me, it would be a practice more than just a cognitive, okay, because these things come up in your body, right?
Right.
Like these feelings. So I'm just thinking of my own example. Like I did that for how many years? Since probably I was 2 years old. So how do people who are listening, how do we start even to recognize a pattern that comes up? I mean, I would love everyone to go see Greg, right? That would be the best, right? But I'm just saying because it's a practice, how do we kind of, you know, get practicing?
Yeah. So there's some work involved because until you become aware that you have a negative pattern in some ways, it's really hard to change it. So, like if you're just living your life, it's kind of like a fish lives in water. The fish doesn't know anything about water. It's just how it's always grown up. It's always been in water. I've always shown up this way. I've always been this way. It's just who I am. And so they don't really know that something's bad until something bad happens in their life. So then they're willing to do some work and say, whoa, where did this come from? What might be my part in doing this? So the key thing that happens is that you become aware of a feeling inside yourself. It could be an ache in the bottom of your stomach. You could feel your chest tighten. You could feel that it's difficult to talk because you're getting nervous or scared. Or you could feel that you just want to disappear. You just want to leave the situation instead of continue this conversation. It's too bad. So that's the beginning of becoming aware of when the pattern is starting to show up. Your body is, but you have to be willing to learn to listen to your body first to know that it's happening. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to describe this. So sometimes I like to use the analogy that we're a school bus driver. And we've got these younger versions of ourselves that are sitting in the seats in the school bus. And we're driving down the road of life, and something comes at us. And then one of those younger versions of yourself jumps up, runs to the front of the bus, grabs the steering wheel out of my hand, and turns the bus because they've seen this before and they're scared of it. And so that little person is connected to that false belief because they were hurt or injured or had a bad experience when they were little. And so they're running up to grab the steering wheel to keep you safe. And what happens is there's a physiological reaction in your body that says that this is happening. Some part of yourself is saying, whoa, this is scary. I've seen this before. And so that means that you're getting triggered to start taking action and making decisions from inside of that false belief because it's kept you safe in the past. So once you've done the work, and you understand what's really true, that I'm more than good enough. When you feel that feeling, you can go inside and say, what is this feeling? Who's upset? What am I worried about? Oh, I can see that I'm feeling scared. Well, thank you. What else am I feeling? Oh, I can see that you're feeling anxious. Well, what else am I scared of? Oh, I see that you're feeling so lonely. And then the second part of that exercise is, what do I need? What do you need in that situation? Oh, I need to call someone and get some help so that I have someone to talk to about this. What else do you need? Oh, I need to write this down because I need to lean into this and figure out how I'm going to handle it. What else do you need? Oh, I may need to call Greg and get some coaching advice. Whatever that need is. So now you've caught it midway. You got triggered by something that's happened. Somebody said something. Somebody might have insulted you. Somebody might have not shown up when they said they were going to show up. Somebody might have criticized something that you did. And so that feeling starts to show up. And so then you catch it. You breathe it in. You name it. Then you say, I've got this. What's really true? Oh, I'm more than good enough. I know how to take care of myself. I know that this is really about the other person. It's not about me. I know that I can take good care of myself and I'm not going to get hurt in this situation. I'm not a little kid anymore. So you have your power statement, you have your mantra that helps you recenter into that adult, wise part of yourself. So then you make a choice that keeps yourself safe, but keeps you leaned into the situation instead of your normal, you could call it a trauma response or your false identity response that you've used in the past, which hasn't worked well for you.
I also would suspect that, as I talked about before, that this feeling in your body when you're getting trigger or reactivated, that exercise you did would be very well if everybody would do it all the time, because the reactivating and trigger, if you've been doing this for a long time, it's going to keep up. It's going to keep going. I mean, like, it just doesn't, it can get reactivated a lot, right? Like, it's not like,
It can, but what happens is when you send some love and care and reassurance to that younger self who jumped up from the back of the bus and is trying to grab the wheel out of your hand, they learn that it's okay, that they can be safe in this situation. So, yes, you might get triggered, but over time, taking care of yourself, it becomes less and less of a trigger. It becomes less and less scary because you know that you can handle it. It's like when I was little, I was petrified of roller coasters. I was absolutely scared to get on a roller coaster. I got on a couple when I was little and it scared the bejeebers out of me. But I didn't want to be scared of roller coasters. I thought they were really cool. So then I made up this decision that I was going to go on the little roller coasters, and I was going to go on pretty much every roller coaster I could find. And by the end, I love roller coasters now. I don't have a problem going around with my hands up in the air anymore because I learned that I could be safe and fine in that situation. And so, yes, we do get re-triggered, but it gets better over time as we heal that wound and we become more and more centered and comfortable inside of who we were born to be, our true self, connected to our power statement.
so when you work with divorcing people, it is to help them if decide at the end of their sessions with you if they're going to divorce or if they're going to stay together?
Well, it depends on when they come to me. Some people come not knowing if they want a divorce or they just want to improve their relationship. That's very early on. If they're in the middle of a divorce, sometimes there's so much water under the bridge and there's so much pain stacked up that even though they do heal themselves and even though they do learn to start living from inside of their true self and they have learned how to make amends and they learn how to get better at showing up, leaning in instead of leaning out in a relationship, sometimes it's just not enough. There's too much negative energy, so much pain that is stacked up that it's too scary for one or both of the partners to lean in to try and create. But they can lean in and create a co-parenting or a co-working relationship because there's now space where they can be separate, but they can come together for what it is that they need to do together. Now, some people come in and there isn't as much pain. They come in, oh, I want to have a good uncoupling because I really care about him. I care about the kids. We have a good working relationship. We're just not happy. We're miserable. It's not that there's a lot of pain or there was cheating going on. Sometimes these couples decide that, yeah, they can recouple because, wow, I learned that I was showing up as I'm not good enough. I'm going to change my behavior pattern. And it's okay for you to call me out on it. If I start showing up the old way, let me know because I don't want to show up that way anymore. I want to be different. So you can actually help each other create a new, healthier, more loving relationship once you become conscious of the patterns and you become willing to be able to work through them and let them go.
The process then, though, if it leads to divorce, though, is what I like that you said is like, and we know how important a good co-parenting relationship is. And if they decide to divorce because it's just too much, years of it maybe, and it's just, they get to a place where they can actually just have a even more of a simpler divorce, right? A mediation. So we're not going to court. We're not fighting like cats and dogs because they've gone through this process with you to understand their responsibility, each of their own as well as their partners, and learn what you do in your sessions, which also I would think if they do decide to divorce, that in the future, it would help them find somebody that they may even connect better with or different. No?
Oh, it's such a rich topic that you just opened up there. So in the divorce, yes. Step 5 in conscious uncoupling, it's a 5-step process in the book. I actually do it in 8 sessions because some of the sessions require 2 sessions. Sorry, some of the steps require 2 sessions to get through all the material. In step 5, though, we talk about the old agreements, both the spoken and the unspoken. Unspoken ones are the ones that are expectations that were never actually discussed. And so, from that point of view, then there's these old agreements that you can decide which ones you want to let go of. I'm going to never love anyone else. I'm going to be married to you for the rest of my life. If you're divorcing, you can let go of those. But the agreement that I'm going to be a good dad or I'm going to be a good mom, you want to keep in place. And I'm really going to show up and do the best I can to support my kids with a good education and a good future. So we literally discuss the old agreements and the new agreements. And the new agreements provide a framework for how you're going to work together and co-parent and what it is that you want to create. How's that going to support the children? How's that going to support each of you going from one house to 2 houses? How's that going to, what do we want to put in place because we care about the other? You deserve to be happy and I deserve to be happy. What agreements do we need in place to be able to support that? So that's step 5. So that creates an opening for the discussions that you were talking about mediation and everything else. You don't have to have a horrible, you can pretty much maybe write out most of these separation terms and agreements and then go to a mediator and fine tune it. And you save yourself a lot of money and therapy sessions and lawyers' fees. And yes, then the future relationships. Typically, what happens is that when you identify your false identity, in Catherine's work, it's called the source fracture wound that you created to keep yourself safe when you were little. You then were open to ignoring certain red flags in relationships. You said, oh, I've seen that before. That's like my mom. I can deal with that. That's okay. The reality is it's the beginning of a codependent relationship. And so after you've done this work and you become conscious about yourself and about how you're showing up, and like you said earlier, you're in the moment connected to your true feelings, needs, and desires. Then when you see those red flags, you can consciously say, wow, that's a red flag. Either I better monitor this or test this to see how serious this is, or that's a showstopper and I'm out of here. I'm not going there again.
Wow. That's great, actually, because when you think about who you married and whether they're a good person or not, there were red flags there for some people, but we didn't even acknowledge it. Or if we didn't, and that also, Greg, we might have not listened to our body say, "Oh, I don't know, it doesn't feel very good." Oh well, we'll just keep going anyways, right? So,
I hope it's going to work out, or
or I
what?
can teach them. I
Yeah,
can teach them, and I can change them, right? Like how many clients I've heard, like I can change them. And it's the same story, right? So you saying that is brilliant because we do tend to ignore those. So once we've figured out our false belief and our patterns or whatever, then you're more aware, right?
right.
Yeah, brilliant.
You can see the red flags, and again, conscious uncoupling. You become conscious of them, so you can see them and make a conscious decision about them. I will say this. I want to add that if somebody comes to me with a severe problem in their life, I also use conscious uncoupling. Because the way I work with conscious uncoupling, it's about consciously uncoupling from your negative patterns, whether it's in a relationship or in your divorce or in your career. It's the same thing. There are certain things that are influencing how you decide to take action or not take action in certain circumstances, which are based on the identity that you've created and you've been living with in your life. And if it's still the one that you created as a child, it's normally trauma based. It's helped you get to where you are. It kept you safe so far, but it's also limited you in certain areas of your life. So
Yeah, so everybody can use you, really.
exactly. Exactly. And that's what Catherine's new book is about. It focuses just on that centerpiece. It's called The True You, Awakening. So it's about awakening to the false identity and then who were you really, true you.
Well, I would like you to come back on for season 3 and talk more deeply about all this stuff, because I could talk for another hour with you, because this is so fascinating. But I usually, before we wrap up this time, is there anything that we missed that you need that is important to gets out in this episode?
Yeah. So if you're concerned and unhappy in your relationship, the sooner that you do this work, the more likely you are to be able to take your relationship to another deeper, more healthier level than you are before it gets too serious and seriously broken and there's too much hurt and pain involved. So whether it's me or another conscious uncoupling coach or another one of Catherine's certified coaches, learn about it, get some help, read the book, and then go from there. I do recommend that getting a coach is different than going through the book, because the power of a coach is to hold up the mirror to help you see what you can't see, because it's normal. It's inside of your daily experience, so it doesn't show up that easy. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying that it's a lot easier and the work is deeper and has a more lasting impact if you do it with a coach. So that's one thing. The next thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help. You don't have to do this alone, whether it's a divorce or whether it's wanting to let go of negative patterns. It can save you a lot of time and energy and pain if you're open to asking for help. For some people, that's really hard to do. If you want to work with me, I would be honored to work with people as new clients. So my website is www.gregwheelercoaching.com, and I offer a free 30 plus minute consultation for first timers, and you can decide if it's of interest to you and if we're a good fit working together and if you can see the benefits or not. So I welcome helping anyone from that perspective. And the only other thing I could say is, if you're really not happy and you feel like your relationship is unhealthy, then it's probably a good time for you to figure out how come and get some help.
Great. There's the last question I ask is for someone who just separated, whether they left or were left, what advice would you give them to help them navigate those overwhelming early days?
Well, they are overwhelming, and they're overwhelming for two reasons, in my opinion. The first is that you're now doing all the work yourself. Before, you had a partner who had, maybe they took care of the bills and you took care of cleaning the house. Or maybe you took care of the primary breadwinner and then you took care of the social community aspects of it, or children raising, or whatever. But now you have to do all of them. And so there's a big learning curve, and it's kind of scary, and you don't know how it's all going to come together. So that's a really big thing. And I would lean into that, and I would get some help from people. Don't be afraid to ask from friends or whatever. How do I start the lawnmower? Whatever it might be. So that's one. And then the other is to get some coaching help, because you're going to be grieving the loss of the other partner in your life, the dreams, and you're also going to maybe feel, well, it didn't work in my last relationship. How do I have any confidence that I'm lovable or can be in another relationship, or I'm worthy of being in a relationship? So you want to get some help with that, because you definitely are worthy of being happy and being in another relationship. And actually, there's one more, and It has to do with the fact that probably most people are aware that close to 50% of marriages end up in divorce in America, 40% internationally, but 70% of second marriages fail. And the reason is not because it's bad people or there's some they were born wrong to be in a marriage. It's not about any of that. It's about that fact that they didn't take the time to learn their part in co-creating what went wrong in their first marriage. Some people feel like, oh, fell off the horse, let me get right back on the horse again and do it again. And what happens is they wind up choosing someone in some ways who's either the exact opposite or very similar to their previous spouse. And then they show up in the same way that they did, and eventually the pattern repeats and the marriage breaks. But doing this work, consciously uncoupling from those negative patterns, opens you up to create a different kind of healthier, happier, loving relationship where you see the red flags and you either negotiate them so they're not red anymore, or you pivot and go somewhere else where there isn't a red flag. So it can be really helpful about that, because everybody deserves to be happy and everybody deserves to be in a healthy, loving relationship. Some of us have to do some work to get there because we have to be loving ourselves, be healthy and happy ourselves so that we can attract someone who's loving and healthy and happy themselves as well.
Greatly said. Let's just mention your book,
Yeah.
your Single Dad's Essentials.
Yeah. So part of my journey, I raised 4 kids by myself without any family in the state of New Jersey. And it was a traumatic experience. It was like 28 years ago that it happened. So none of this work was available back then. And it's basically captures some of my story, but a lot of what I learned the hard way. It's the do's and don'ts of co-parenting, how to take care of yourself, what's the best way to support your children. And it's written from a dad perspective because, you know, men aren't always the greatest social networkers. So there's some advice there for men in terms of, because you need a support network if you're going to be a single parent, and or even co-parenting. Sometimes you need backup and support. So highly recommended, Single Dad Essentials, the 12 most important things that single dads need to know. You change the pronouns to moms and it's the same. Probably 95% of the do's and don'ts and everything work the same for moms as it does for single moms as it does for single dads.
Well,
I think it's helpful.
Well, Greg, it was great to have you on. I'm going to love to have you back on. This, as I said to you before, that every couple could probably use you in their corner.
Well, thank you.
Right? Not divorcing even, like just tuning up, right? Like, I mean, this is such good work.
I actually think it's actually part of becoming a conscious living individual. And so, yeah, I mean, being conscious of your own patterns, being conscious of how you can live a healthier, happier, more loving life, that's good for everybody. So, yeah, I wish it was taught in college.
Yeah, I think we said that before we started recording. I just really think that this is something that everybody could use. It would be a healthier them, which would attract a healthier other.
So I have worked with some young people, young adults, 20, 21, 22, and I've used the Calling in the One book, and it has the same underlying identity transformation work in there to support becoming self-aware. But I use it in the context of, instead of calling in the one, it's creating the life you love for younger people, because maybe they don't have the relationship experience that provides the insight and the health. But you'd be surprised. I've actually dealt with some young adults who were sexually molested. So there are wounds there, and then those wounds result in negative patterns, and so they've been unhappy and not feeling satisfied in the life that they're living. There's an opportunity to heal that.
Yeah, it is great work. I look forward to talking to you again, and thank you for coming on, Greg. It's always a pleasure.
it has been a pleasure, and it's fun and an honor. So thank you very much, Karen.
Thanks for joining today's conversation with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guests, and don't forget to follow us on Spotify and our YouTube channel at divorceworkshop.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. And for a complete guide to navigating separation and divorce, check out the Just Separated workbook on Amazon. It covers emotions, co-parenting, finances, legal insights, and recovery. A must-have for anyone going through separation or divorce.